Hello, you guys. I'm Carlos, and I'm here today with Pastor Justine and Pastor Wendi Neal. And we are here. It's a special edition of Circuit Update, our podcast. And before we start our conversations, we want to invite everybody who is listening, either through Spotify or Apple or watching on YouTube, like us. And if you know of somebody that may like these, please share it so that everybody can also get a glimpse of this. It's what's happening not only in the Oklahoma Indian Conference, but particularly today, which I'm very excited about, in the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference, and particularly in Norman with First Americans UMC. So it's exciting to be here today. So why don't you please tell the good people of Oklahoma, Pastor Justine, who are you serving, and then we go from there.
Sure. My name is Reverend Justine Wilson. I'm the pastor at Norman First American, a United Methodist Church, and we are, as Carlos mentioned, we're in the OIMC. So we are just down the road from McFarlin, but we are in a separate conference. So I've been there this is my 11th year. And we have some wonderful things that will be coming up that we'll talk about in a little bit.
So with that in mind, so tell us about First American UMC. And those who are not familiar with your church, what do you want for the people to know about your history, about the people, about your mission?
Sure. So we're one of the newest churches in the OIMC. We began 30 years ago. This is our 30th anniversary. And we began at the Wesley Foundation at the University of Oklahoma. A group of former students got together, and they wanted to make it a little bit easier for Native people going through the university. And at that time, there weren't as many supportive services, there just weren't as many things in place to help students, and they had a hard time going through. And so they began to gather at the Wesley Center, and it was a group of former students, new families, and current students who were still coming through. And they just gathered together to support one another. And as they gathered, they started growing, and eventually they moved to Campus Corner, and actually just like a block away from McFarlin. The building's not there anymore, but and as they were gathering, they had support programs that they began doing, which we continue to do. We have a campus ministry for Native students at the University of Oklahoma. But it just began to grow from that. And they had a vision of what they wanted to see a Methodist church look like that was different than what they had experienced. And so they began having conversations with the bishop and with the Methodist Church. At this time, it was simply a ministry and not affiliated. And they requested permission from the bishop to form a church. And the bishop gave provisional permission. And it was predicated on that the ministry would embrace the totality of Native culture. And that was imprinted from the very beginning for this church and ministry to engage in a community-grounded, culturally grounded, and informed ministry with the community. That was from its foundation. And so from that, it continued to grow and moved to Triad Village. And then eventually they began looking for property to build a church. And so eventually they found 8 acres, and 20 years ago, they built the foundation for the current facility that we have. So we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of our current church building and the 30th anniversary of the ministry as a whole. And so a lot of times, because we are on 8 acres, people think we're part of the city park system. But the upshot of that is because they did have the foresight to get a large piece of land, we are able to do not only our Sunday services and things that are more associated with Methodist church services, but we're also able to do ceremonial gatherings, traditional prayer services, because we have the land that we can do that. And so we have been blessed with that. And there was a vision. There was the community was gathered together by elders at that time to envision what could this possibly be. And from that, they created this envisioning document and began just tracing out what are the possibilities of a ministry that they longed for but had not seen or experienced. And so they began 20 years ago on phase 1. And that is what we are living in today. But there was a phase 2, a phase 3, and a phase 4. And we have not done those ones yet, but that's what we're hoping to do, and that's what we're embarking on this anniversary, is to complete that vision the elders in the community set out those years ago. So we're excited. We're excited about that, and just blessed with the different ministries that we are able to do, and have been expanding over these both 20 and 30 years at our location.
That's awesome. That's great. So, so the current building, as you said, it was built 20 years ago.
Right.
20 years ago. So tell us about, will you tell about the vision, the completing the construction of the sanctuary and educational center, right? That is the next phase.
Yes. So it would be starting the construction of the sanctuary. So the phase 1 was a fellowship hall and some offices and a kitchen. And so we meet in our fellowship hall. And then we immediately take everything down and eat in our fellowship hall. So whenever we have an event, we have to do multiple setups and takedowns for that. Phase 2 is the building of the sanctuary. And that's what we are hoping to do. We want to combine phase 2 with phase 3, which was an expansion of our educational facilities. And so we hope to build the sanctuary, expand the kitchen, and we can talk about that a little bit later. We do a lot with food, an awful lot, and we're just we've run out of room. So now when we cook, we have to cook outdoors and bring food in just because we don't have the space, to feed the amount of people that we cook for. And then our children's facilities are just really quite small. So we want to greatly expand our educational capacity, expand our cooking facilities to make it more commercial grade, and then the phase 4 was actually a multi-purpose building that would be able to house powwows, ceremonial dances, so it would be weatherproof.
Yes.
Right now we do everything outdoors.
Yeah.
We cook outdoors, we dance outdoors, we eat outdoors, because we don't have enough room indoors, But that means with bad weather comes, we have difficulty, and we're just we've been very blessed because McFarlin has been so gracious to be our weather backup, because they realize some of those limitations that we have, but that's for the construction. That's kind of the vision that was laid out, and that we would like to just to fulfill that, and during COVID, our Native communities were hit very hard, and we lost such a high percentage of our elders, and that was just a very difficult thing to see. So many, both of our ceremonial leaders as well as our church elders, did not make it through that time, unfortunately, and you began to hear church members say, I'm not going to live to see that vision, but I hope our next generation. And so we just really felt this a burden that we needed to honor what had been envisioned before and see that through. And so we just encouraged people, even though COVID was a difficult time, said let's wind up rather than down, And so we just continued meeting and networking and trying to build relationships, particularly with our Oklahoma conference, where we're connected within the OYMC, but we have not been well connected beyond the OYMC. And so we began doing that outreach during that time. After that, I know a lot of churches, it was difficult kind of getting your feet under you, after COVID. And a lot of our youth programming, a lot of our families, there was just so much disruption. So I said, well, let's go big and rather than cut back, And I feel like we're at another inflection point. There's been a lot of changes within the Methodist Church. I know that has been deeply felt denominationally wide. But to me, when you have those inflection points, you go big rather than go small. And I just have that sense, both within our church but beyond within our larger denomination, that this is an inflection moment, and we just need to go big. And the weight of those aspirations and those dreams and visions of what could be, not all of our elders have made it through, but they have given that to us. It's a sacred trust. And so this is our year. This is our 30th anniversary of the founding, and we want to honor for the next 30 years, this is going to be our gift for those next generations. So that's where we're at.
That's
right
awesome.
now.
That's great. I love it. Go big in this inflection time. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. So this is kind of the, we heard about your story about, first Americans. And so now is the time where everybody who's listening and paying attention can be part of this grace and part of this dream come true, and part of the what the elders thought and envisioned back in the day. So on October 14, there will be a fundraiser dinner at the partner church, McFarlin Memorial UMC, celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day and raising money to support the capital campaign. Yes. So can you tell us why now? I mean, you tell us why now, what it is, the inflection time and everything, but do you want to add anything else that you want to talk about that?
Yes. So, it's a good thing that we're just feeling the constraints of our facility. So what's unique about our church is that not only do we do our Sunday services, but we also do our ceremonial practices as well. And that is new. That's different. And that requires both a lot of space, but also a lot of infrastructure to do that. And so in addition to our Sunday services, we have our sweat lodge ceremonies that we do. We have our Native American church gatherings that we do. We have our devotional ceremonies that we do. We partner with the University of Oklahoma with our Native ministry. Not only do we feed every Monday nights, but we also co-host a semi-annual gourd dance and stomp dance that we do. And this is because for a lot of our young people, especially college age, they want to be connected to the culture but not know how to do that. And so instead of saying, well, go find your ceremonial ground, that's not easy to do. We bring the stomp dance to the students. And this is often the only stomp dance they've been to. But this allows them then to connect to their traditional grounds and their ceremonies. And because of where we're located in Norman, we are an intertribal community. We have our tribal hymn book, and it has 15 tribal languages that are represented, and we sing in all those languages. So while we have a stomp dance, which is a southeastern tradition, we will do a gourd dance, which is a western tradition, right? Because we have to honor all of those traditions. So in addition to those things, we also try and do ministry not only with college students. We've begun working with Norman Indian Education so that we are working with students prior to college. And we're trying to provide that grounding. And so we began during COVID, when the school shut down, we became the educational site and for all the Native students in the city of Norman. So they would have uninterrupted education during that time. So that began this partnership from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and we have continued to foster that relationship. We go into the schools, provide programming there, and this year we are starting kind of a phase 2 of that, where We will continue the programming during the week, but then we will have a Saturday camp for young people to come. And then we will have a bi-weekly drum group so that our young people can learn those songs. They can learn how to dance. They can learn how to make regalia and grow that throughout the year so that hopefully we can have a youth powwow and honoring events. So that's a partnership that we do. And in addition to that, because we have so many educators, we also, our church does its own scholarships. So this is the time when we start cutting the checks for all of those scholarships. But we really want to help students in the most practical ways possible. So all of this is part of our mission. It's not just being on Sundays, but having an education, a very strong educational focus. And something I have spoken with Reverend Neal about, we're very excited. We have a partnership in theological education. So we offer, through the Voices School of Theology, we offer classes for clergy and for lay people as well. And people can earn CEU credits. But we have now joined with the North American Institute of Indigenous Theological Studies so that any classes that are taken, and they are offered free of charge, so that anyone in the community can do that. They can then transfer that free into the NATES program, and those can go towards a Master's of Divinity or a doctoral degree.
Wow.
And so we are trying to transform education all the way from our kindergarten through Indian education, all the way through seminary and postgraduate, and just looking at how we can do this differently. And so our hope is if we can raise enough money, then our sanctuary can be a technology center where these classes can be taught, connected to our tribal colleges, connected to other locales. So there's just a larger vision.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
So we're excited.
It's very exciting.
Yes.
That's wonderful. That's great. All right. So now for Wendi, that you are the partner with Reverend Wilson. Tell us why this partnership between Norman First American and McFarlin is important.
Well, I think we met in the fall of 2022, and we just became friends. And what I learned from Pastor Justine is that even though we're serving in different contexts, we have a lot in common. We share a lot of the same values and mission, education in the community, and the connection to the University of Oklahoma, and feeding people. We have a shared mission and vision of serving the community. And so just through conversations, we talked about, well, what could it look like if we do things together? And really, it's a part of being a connectional church, our United Methodist connection and our heritage. It's a part of being the body of Christ, that we are made up of many different members, yet we are one body. And so it's really living out that Christian vision of what it means to be the church together. And I think that's important. But really, we like each other. And, we're 2.5 maybe miles apart. And McFarlin has a history of serving with Norman First American. But today's a new day. And so we've talked about what it means to have a mutually beneficial partnership and relationship rather than, maybe a one-sided relationship where, one side has the resources offered to the other in need, but what does it mean to have a mutually beneficial relationship where we're sharing with each other, learning from one another, growing together? We all have things that we can share and that we can learn from each other. And so that's what we're looking to do. And I think it's a living out of our calling as the one body of Christ. I think that when we, relationships is a part of God's nature, right? One God, three persons. And so we are made to be a part of a community, and when we develop relationships, we are nourishing the body. But relationships that are respectful and compassionate and humble and open, and those are healthy relationships. And so I think that's why it's important. And also in this post general conference, this new era of the United Methodist Church, there's so much to look forward to, and dreaming big and hope for the future. And I really think that these relationships that we have with one another in the Oklahoma Annual Conference, OIMC, and together is what's going to strengthen our church. We need each other. We need to serve together. We need to work together. It's just who we are, and I think we can benefit as long as relationships are healthy and are mutually beneficial. And so, I'm excited.
Sounds very exciting.
It is. It is. I was talking before about how the event that we're doing on the 14th, it's to me significant in a couple different ways. One is that we are going to be exploring, and during the course of that event, there'll be some other things happening, but we'll be having a panel that will talk about what it means to be both Native and Christian. And as part of that conversation, that will be led by the assistant to the bishop, Reverend Margaret Johnson. But we will have a series of speakers covering 3 generations of church leaders in their 20s and their 40s and 60s and 70s, of how they have negotiated those identities, those experiences, how they have been life-giving, how they've been challenging, and seeing the different articulations of that over generations. And the hope is that we want to open that conversation to everyone present, of looking at what does contextual ministry look like today, and what are the possibilities, and what are the experiences that go back so very far. And then how do we go forward with that? So it's a conversation time, but at the same time, it's also an opportunity for churches, our native churches and our non-native churches, to look at how do we do connectional ministry in this next generation. And to me, this is so exciting. Sometimes, in a place I was at previously, they had a policy that they would do no outreach speaking engagements in the month of November, because the only time Native churches are consulted is around Thanksgiving. And so I remember, and we get calls during that time, and I remember a church saying, well, we need you on this date, and I said, well, we have an event that date. And I said, could we do it a few weeks after? And I said, well, we'll be in December, and then we don't need you. And that was literally what they said. And so we're looking at how do we relate to each other and partner in ways that look different, perhaps, than what has been done before. So to me, I'm very excited about this partnership. It's really born out of this genuine relationship, of how we can grow together in a mutually edifying way. And that's what I think the vision is how can our conferences do that well? How can our churches do that well? How can our clergy do that well? How can just the body of Christ do that well? And that's why I'm so excited about this 14th, because it's an opportunity for us to explore that and hopefully grow that and develop that in a good way.
So I like the word mutually edifying, and that's so cool. So I want to just extend that, how that partnership look like for you, Wendi, and if there's anything that needs to be added.
Yeah, well, we're just getting started in this relationship, and so I think getting started means getting to know one another. Getting to know names and stories and histories and our purpose and our mission and what we have in common and maybe what we don't have in common. And so we're starting that. building trust. You know, it takes time to build trust between anybody. And I think because of history between Native persons and non-Native persons, there needs to be a level of awareness in order to build trust. It will take time. And, you know, for non-Native people, we don't really have the right to ask for trust or to expect that. We're not entitled to it. And yet, we have this opportunity to build a relationship. And again, if it's built with respect and compassion and humility and being good listeners and awareness, I think there are lots of possibilities and there's lots of hope for what can be. And so, you know, I again, it will take time, so we're beginning. I'm really excited about the classes that Pastor Justine was talking about, and hope to have some folks from McFarlin to be a part of that. She is going to be teaching 6 weeks on Native hermeneutics, biblical interpretation, and then after that 6 weeks on Native theology. And if I might brag a little bit, if you don't know, Pastor Justine has a PhD in New Testament from Harvard University, and she's not only an incredible pastor in the local church context, she's a great biblical scholar. And so getting to share and to learn from her is an excellent opportunity, and one way that we're beginning this partnership. And of course, the dinner on October 14th, and not only to help raise funding for this next phase for the building, but also the opportunity to hear from the panelists and to learn from them. I think it's a really, it's an interesting topic that about, you know, being Native and Christian, and often, you know, I think there has been an idea that you have to be one or the other. And so excited to hear and to learn about what it means to be both Native and Christian. And so we're just starting this partnership and then dreaming together about, you know, what comes after October 14th and what that partnership can look like.
And our hope is that it can become an annual event, and just exploring again conversations as they come up organically, you know, and how we can both share and listen and learning from each other, and I just think opening those doors up, because sometimes we can get a little bit segmented, you know. We can be in our little bubble in a way, you know, and then we just know, like she said, just down the road, you know, and yet we don't know who they are. We don't have those connections, and there's all things that we do. Some things we do really, really well. Some things we, you know, have more room to grow on. and I think when you put it all together, we're good at a whole bunch of things, you know. So just building on our strengths and then supporting us in our areas where we may need that support, it's just, to me, it's win-win. And that's what, to me, you know, it's the goal, is to always go for the win-win. So I do hope that people are able to come out on a Monday, October 14th. We will have this wonderful panel, but in addition to that, there will be a Native feast. And what I mean by that is these are foods that are traditional foods in the community. They have been harvested by tribal members. They are being prepared. And you can't buy this in stores. You can't go to McDonald's and pick up a to-go order. We've actually planned this significantly in advance, so we will have wild onions. Those are only available for a few short weeks at the beginning of the year, so we prepared significantly in advance to be able to have that. And those they grow out in the wild, and then people go out and hand harvest them, clean them. It is a very labor-intensive project, but we are having that available for people. And then we have wild bison, which has been donated from the Cheyenne and Arapaho nations. They have donated that, and those are all been raised within the tribe. We'll have pashofa, and of course our fry bread and other delicacies as well. But we will be preparing those all by hand. for people to eat. So it's an opportunity for people to try traditional foods that they may not. There will be a silent auction, and it is before the holidays. So if you would like to get some handmade items and services, we've had donations of services as well as these items before the holidays. Would be a wonderful opportunity for that. There will be a live painting by Chickasaw artist Brent Greenwood, internationally renowned. So we're very thankful for that, and people will have an opportunity to purchase his work at the conclusion of that. And that's in addition to a panel presentation. So it'll be a very, very packed evening, but we're excited about it. Both in what it will, the potential it has for expanding the ministries that we do, but also in the collaboration and working across conference lines.
Yes.
So we're excited.
That's awesome. That's great. Can you please tell us more about the classes that will be happening at First American UMC?
So they are on Tuesday evenings.
Tuesday evening.
Yeah, at 6:30, starting September 17th. And we'll be meeting at Norman First American, and that's at 1950 Beaumont Drive in Norman. But it's also offered via Zoom. So we do have people who, we've had people in the past from Hong Kong, from Africa, so it's very broad. But anywhere in the country, people can participate in that. And particularly when we get into the native theology segment, we will have guest speakers throughout the OIMC who will be engaging in some of these conversations with us. So I'm very excited about that and thankful for their participation. But it's a wonderful opportunity. And as I mentioned, anyone who does participate will receive CEU credits. But if someone is interested in pursuing further theological education, they could pursue that either through NATES or their transferable credits. So if someone wanted to apply to any school of theology, all of those would transfer. So, and the courses offered, the 2 courses are offered for free of charge.
That's amazing. Yeah. What are the challenges for native and non-native churches who partner together in ministry? What are the challenges and what are the benefits, the blessings to do this that you see, that you have encountered, or that you can foresee?
I think some of the challenges are sometimes it's just knowing if the churches are there. You know, I've had people say, "Oh, I didn't even know you were in Norman," you know, and so even though we occupy the state of Oklahoma, but because of the different conference divisions, we don't necessarily know the church that's just down the street from us, you know. And McFarlin can be doing all these amazing things, which they do, and then we don't know, because we just don't have that connection necessarily. We connect within our conference more than perhaps the church down the street, and so that can be a challenge. Sometimes there are always going to be, I think, just cultural differences. You know, our church always runs late. You know, I don't mean we necessarily start late, but our church, like, you know, we just go longer, you know, and that may be, you know, different for other churches if they're used to a stricter ending time and wondering why we're still going. But, you know, sometimes it can be just small things, you know, and just how people communicate. There can always be those little differences. But I always think those help us to grow. Yes. You know, anytime we are in contact with something different, then it triggers a response in us to either hunker down or again to go bigger. And I think God's vision and hope for us is to always go big, you know. And when we are in conversation, when we are connecting with others, it allows us to understand our history better. It allows us to understand ourselves better. It allows us to grow in empathy better. it just edifies us in so many ways that we can't even articulate. And so it's always a blessing, you know. And to me, the challenges that come with that are opportunities for more blessings. You know, I always like to see it in that way. You know, it's always a win-win. You know, so that would be my experience. I think as long as people come with an open heart and able to hear, well, you know, maybe we do things a little different and are open to that, you know, I think things can go very well, you know. But it's just that openness, that receptiveness, I think. What would you say?
Yeah, I think similar. I think there are probably a variety of reasons why there have not been as many partnerships between OIMC and Oklahoma. You know, a lot of that due to, you know, our colonial past and forced removal and wars and an intentional effort by white Christians to strip Native Americans of language and culture and traditions. And so there's that, we haven't interacted as much. And I think more recently, out of maybe coming from a place of wanting to be respectful, of wanting to be cautious, of not wanting to repeat mistakes of the past, that non-Native people have really sort of stayed away out of respect. And so the challenges are, how do you enter into this relationship, different cultural differences, and not repeat, you know, those mistakes, to do things in a different way. I think mistakes will be made, you know, it's inevitable, and yet, you know, we can't learn from each other, we can't grow together, we can't become friends and share in ministry if we stay away. And so the benefits are growing and learning together, and making a difference in our community in the name of Jesus Christ, you know, and sharing God's love together. And so, you know, on a more local level, there have been misunderstandings, I think, between McFarlin and Norman First American. And so that's a challenge just with, you know, our own local personal history. And so they're not things that can't be overcome. But again, it's an awareness of our histories and stories and who we are. And I think, you know, when we engage with people and we learn their stories and their histories, it causes us then to be reflective about, well, who are we? What are our stories? What are our values? And so I think it is a healing, and it's a process of becoming more complete and whole, this vision that God has of us as human beings and as a community. And so I think the blessings outweigh, you know, the fears and the doubts, but again, you know, just entering in respectfully and with an open heart, a willingness to learn and grow and to be friends, you know.
There's a Hebrew Bible scholar named Tikva Frymer-Kensky, and she said, you know, the way we should approach Scripture is with a hermeneutic of chesed. And I kind of think of that as how we are supposed to be towards each other. We should have, and we should interpret each other benevolently. That should always be our default. And I don't know that we always do that. I think in a human way, sometimes we can be maybe more suspicious, you know, but I would say always give that benefit of the doubt. Always give that, assume benevolence, you know. And I think when we do that, I think we're right 95% of the time, you know, and if we're not, that will come out anyway. So we don't need to worry about that. But just that grace, you know, sometimes we can anticipate things in such a way that it forecloses that connection, that conversation, you know. And I just think we're at that moment when we can say, I'm willing to extend myself, and let's just go with that benevolence, and just see if God can't bless that.
Yes, yeah, that's beautiful, that's wonderful. All right, so to kind of wrap it up, so it's October 14th at what time?
We start at 5:30.
5:30, and it's at McFarlin Memorial.
419 South University Boulevard in Norman, Oklahoma.
All right. So, and how can everybody can support First American efforts and vision and dreams for all of this, and the ministry of Norman, period, of the United Methodist Church?
Look online at McFarlinUMC.org for how you can register and sign up for this dinner. We would love to pack the house.
Yes.
Tables are $1,000 for a table, $125 per person. And so I would encourage you to come and to support, enjoy a wonderful evening of wonderful food, great panel discussion, but also knowing that you're supporting this church that is doing God's work in Norman.
Yes, yes. All right, so we know what to expect. We know how to go about it. And any final thoughts from you both that you want to share with the good people of Oklahoma Conference and Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference, which is the one that birthed us as a conference?
Yeah. Well, again, we hope people are able to come out to October 14th, but we encourage people, get to know your local OYMC church, and maybe just down the street or not too far away from you. And I think I can speak for all the churches that we all have fundraisers that we do. We all have opportunities that the churches are open to the community. And those are just great times to begin those bonds and to build those relationships. And I think that's really what we're called to do. And so, and I, of course, encouragement, I know this is going out through to the Oklahoma Conference, but I know our OIMC churches, we can also do that as well, and just making those connections and building on that. So,
our relationship started with just an email. Say, hey, I'm here, you're here. Let's meet. Let's get to know each other. And so it's possible, and just see what God does with that. And thanks to the Oklahoma Annual Conference for having us here and letting us talk about this, and to share what's happening in Norman, and excited about what can come and what it could mean also for other churches in Oklahoma.
Well, we have been highlighting ministry of Oklahoma, period, not differentiating on conferences. So I think that this is just right of what we need to be doing. And I love what you said. Give the hermeneutics of the benefit of the doubt, and go big. Yeah. Go big, because this is a time to go big. So you heard it here first. So we're hoping to see you there in this wonderful event on October 14. And once again, thank you for tuning to us and share these important news. So blessings, and see you soon.